That gave me my life's purpose in so many ways, in the sense that, I decided from that time on, I decided that I wanted to be useful to others. I wanted to be of benefit to others. I wanted to help others. And I think one of my life goals is basically when I die, I want to be completely used up, like a finished candle.
Our featured speaker today is the founder at SAFAL Partners and a co-founder of Entrepreneurs for Nepal, specializing in economic, private sector, and entrepreneurship development. Ashu, it's a great honor to have you with us today. Thanks so much for making time to share your journey with us.
Happy to be here, Nancy and Daniel.
So I was wondering if you could just sort of lead off telling us about some of your experience growing up and maybe about some of the earlier influences in your life that kind of shaped your journey professionally and personally.
Sure. Well, I was born in Nepal, Kathmandu, Nepal. I grew up in a very large household with both sets of grandparents from my mother's side as well as from my father's side, uncles, cousins, and so forth. So it was a very large family. And one advantage of growing up in such a large family was you had to negotiate, you had to argue, you had to debate. You never ran out of playmates when playing out in the field. So it was a very boisterous, noisy, loud, debate oriented, discussion oriented, achievement oriented, large family in Kathmandu, actually. Kathmandu in the late 70s, early 80s was more like a kind of a, medieval village, if you will. Not much traffic, a lot of rice paddy fields, very verdant in so many ways. So I had a great time growing up in Kathmandu. I went to a Jesuit high school run by the Jesuit priests from Cincinnati, Ohio, actually, in Nepal. So that school gave me a really good foundation in terms of, character, in terms of English language, in terms of my love for the sciences, math, technical stuff, as well as, we had a lot of extracurriculars, elocution, debating, writing, and so forth. So I was sort of like an all-around good student, if you will. At the end of high school, I got a scholarship to go to the US for college. I went there, had a wonderful time in the US. Altogether, I spent 7 years in the US. And after finishing my degrees, I returned back to Nepal, partly for family reason, because my father was not doing very well at the time. I had some family issues that needed to be taken care of. So I came back and spent some time with the family. And then I went off to far western Nepal, in rural Nepal, because at the time I had some friends there starting a social movement. And this particular social movement was about social justice. At that time, they were fighting to emancipate up to 200,000 bonded agricultural laborers from years of debt bondage, sort of like a slavery like system, if you will, in the agricultural sector, a system that had been entrenched for many for decades, actually. So these friends of mine, activists, they needed help, some sort of a strategic help, somebody who could be their man Friday, if you will, somebody who could do the meeting minutes, somebody who could put together press notes, somebody who could run around and meet with journalists, give them talking points, and help them strategize how to deal with politicians, policymakers, and so forth, so they could pass their agenda of freeing up 200,000 bonded agriculture labor. So I became a social activist for about 2 years. I did that. I really enjoyed it. It was almost no pay sort of a job, but really running high in adrenaline, and that gave me my life's purpose in so many ways. In the sense that I decided from that time on, I decided that I wanted to be useful to others. I wanted to be of benefit to others. I wanted to help others. And I think one of my life goals is basically when I die, I want to be completely used up, like a finished candle, if you will, right? I want to help people, and also, and I've benefited a lot by being helped by other people. I have had excellent mentors, advisors, professors who wrote recommendations for me, colleagues who helped me achieve success, career success, friends and family members, who were very enthusiastic about my success. They cheered me on and all that. And I benefited from all that. And I think, I'm in a position to help others. I was, am, and will be. And I want to do that more. So that really, guides my sense of what I am, in the sense that, I'm here to assist others. And that ethos is very, very strong for me. And then, after my social activist days were over, I moved on to work for the Germans in Kathmandu. They were doing a lot of small business advising work. I did that for about 3 years in Kathmandu, and then I was hired to do something similar in Dhaka, Bangladesh, where I was there for 3.5 years, working for International Finance Corporation, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank. And then I enjoyed that as well. And after finishing up at IFC, I moved back to Nepal and was given a challenge to run a media company. This media company was not doing very well. It had militant labor union problems. It had, almost 200 staff members. It was bleeding money. It was about to be closed down, but a very prestigious media company, a media company that was important for Nepal's democracy, freedom of speech, and so forth, but not doing financially very well. Prior to that job, I had no experience running a company. So it was like, kind of a baptism by fire, if you will. I had to Google a lot. Something like, what does a CEO do? How does a CEO deal with the board? How does a CEO deal with militant labor unions? That sort of stuff. But on the whole, again, I had a great board. I had great colleagues. I was able to, solve the labor union issues, and they were very politically motivated at the time. But I had a lot of help actually. So had it been only my work, I probably wouldn't have done a great job. But then, with help from so many people, colleagues, board members, and the community at large, the media community and certain politicians and policymakers, everything came together. That work really went well. I also decided that, even though I like to write and I am a consumer of media, I didn't like to work in the media industry per se, because it was mostly about going out, collecting ads from multinationals, from big companies and so forth. And I hated asking for ads from companies actually. So the challenge was done, and, I had a great time. It really helped me grow as a manager, as a manager of people, manager of resources, manager of results, if you will. From there on, I moved to a nonprofit actually. This particular nonprofit, had its headquarters in London. Its name is WaterAid Nepal. Through that nonprofit, I led a team of about 25 people, public health experts, water engineers, sanitation experts, people who are good in public advocacy and so forth. So basically, we did a lot of sanitation related work going around Nepal, tying up with other agencies such as UNICEF, SNV, and other UN agencies to make sure that, Nepal at that time was not what we call open defecation free, because there were not toilets for every household. So we went around, raised funds to build toilets for villages, because what happens is that in an open defecation situation, there are health problems, there are brain development issues, there are so many other social, cultural, and negative issues. So those need to be addressed. I was running WaterAid at the time, WaterAid Nepal, and we played some role in alleviating some of those problems by raising funds, by working with villagers, working with communities, and with a focus on 3 groups of people. The first group of people were people with disabilities, because they have a hard time accessing toilets and water facilities. So we focused on them. We also focused on school-going girls, because they used to miss, or they still miss, I suppose, 4 days or 5 days of school every month because of menstruation, and they didn't have access to water at school, no decent toilet and so forth. So we worked on that as well. Raise that as a big issue socially. And the third group were elderly and also marginalized communities. The caste system sometimes often works in devious ways, and people at the lowest end of the caste system, they are considered to be quote unquote dirty and not given toilet facilities, water facilities, and so forth. So we really worked to ward off people's belief around that set of issues, and wanted to sort of, preserve the importance of human dignity at the center of everything we did at WaterAid. So WaterAid was great. I worked there for 4.5 years, worked very closely with the government, policymakers, engineers, and other professionals. I was like a professional who went into water without knowing not much about water and sanitation, but I was able to learn. I was able to absorb a lot of information. I was able to formulate a new way of doing certain work. I was helpful, useful, and successful at the same time. So partly because of luck, partly because of my own skill, I suppose, but things worked out. Let's put it that way. And from WaterAid, I moved on to a private company. Private company was a family-run company. It's called, Sherpa Adventure Gear. It is like Nepal's answer to Patagonia or North Face, one of those big brands, so to speak. This company, was founded by Mr. Sherpa. He wanted to hand the company over to his son, but he had some issues with factories, with local procurement, with local government, so on and so forth. So he needed an outside CEO to come in, clean up the system, if you will, and also help sort of work with his son to make sure that the handover from one generation to another generation would go smoothly. Again, I knew nothing about clothing business, from the apparel business, nothing about outdoor gear and so forth. So I jumped in. Again, I wanted to learn. I realized that, my value add would be helping with the supply chain issues, because, international commerce is all about supply chain. If you can make it efficient within a company, that that translates to saving money and making money. So I focused on that. We also work with German buyers, European buyers who are very insistent on compliance, factory standards, and so forth. So, a lot of education for the local factories about how their toilets had to be clean, how they could not pay their workers, pay decent wages, put in decent lighting, health related issues and all that. So a lot of education on that front. I enjoy that. I hired a compliance officer, trained her very well so that, she could do the reports. She could sort of authenticate all the information that were being sent to us by the factories. And when the third party auditor showed up to audit the factories, everything was in order, honest, verifiable, and so forth. So I enjoyed that part of the job. And basically, engaging with athletes, mountaineers, trekkers, hikers who wanted to try our gear and sort of like go out in the wilderness, So the company was an educational site for me in the sense that, I was given this opportunity to learn. I tried to make the best use of my time. I learned a lot, and I even became a better manager, actually. So running a media company, which was more of a turnaround situation, then moving on to a nonprofit, which was more like a social service, but raising funds, deploying those funds, working with local communities. And third was this private sector company, Sherbat Engineer, a family-run company, making sure that, that I was not treating negatively on the family's turf, so to speak, making sure that, those sensitivities were respected. But at the same time, I was doing the work for the company, for the betterment of the company, balancing those different variables, difficult at times, but I learned a lot. I learned how to balance that over time, and I became a better manager, better person as a result. And from Sherpa in 2017, I decided that, it was time to move on because the things that I was hired for at Sherpa were pretty much done. I could stay on for another couple of years, I suppose, but I wanted to move on and, wanted to do something on my own. And that's when I founded SAFAL Partners with 3 other friends. So SAFAL Partners, initially we thought we would have a fund, but that didn't work out because, I realized that I didn't have a fund. I did have some fundraising background, but not much in terms of, deploying the funds into startups and all that. I had a better background as a mentor, as an advisor, as a trainer, if you will, rather than fund manager. So I decided, I had to build some track record first. So we started Nepal's first angel investment platform called SAFAL Angels. And through that, we raised money to fund 4 startups, 2 of which have exited now. So angel investment is still a slow process in Nepal. There are not regulations in place. I'm in conversation with the regulators, with other private investors to make sure that, we really have a thriving angel investment scene. And in recent times, we have tied up with Lankan angels in Sri Lanka, with Bangladeshi angels in Bangladesh, and also with some angel investors in Hyderabad, India, and Delhi and other places. And we're now forming a regional angel investment network. Regional in the sense that, we'll have angel investors from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and so forth, and looking for ways to, hold regular conferences and invest in each other's startups, if you will. So that has been a great joy because 4 years ago, I knew nothing about angel investment. I had only read about it in books and, blogs and what have you. But now that we're actually practicing it and figuring out, where the laws are friendly to us, where the laws are not friendly to us. So, all this has been very educational. Our bread and butter really comes from consulting work. We do what I call operational consulting. Having run 3 major companies in Nepal, I've gathered enough competence, I suppose, in running companies, like managing the board, managing human resource, hiring people, training them, developing them, growing them, and also, financial best practices. And many companies don't know that. When the new CEO comes in, he or she usually has a hard time doing so many things. Too many balls up in the air. But having someone like me and my team, I suppose, a team that I train under me really gives assurance to many CEOs and organization leaders because, I've seen variants of what they're undergoing in other companies. So I can come in with ideas and basically act as a coach for the CEO, for the senior management team. And this has gone very well, actually, because in Nepal, many companies still need to harness productivity gains, efficiency gains. We are not on the innovation frontier yet. We are not on the, effectiveness frontier yet, so to speak, but productivity gains and efficiency gains are still to be harnessed. And that's where we bring a lot of value to our clients, and we're happy about that. And the third thing we do is, we also work with nonprofits. We don't charge them money. We basically give them pro bono consulting work so that, they can put together a board, they can raise funds, they can sort of like do their work more effectively. Because I've always had a soft corner for nonprofits. I admire what they do under trying circumstances. And I think that, they do not have access to first-rate advice, first-rate, sort of private sector kind of approach. But given the right leadership in nonprofits, I think they can do wonders. And I think a part of my time I try to spend with nonprofits, really helping them develop their capabilities. In 2007, just to circle back to 2007, some friends and I, we started what we still call actually Entrepreneurs for Nepal. It's a Facebook group that now has more than 100,000 members. It's a very active group. Through that, Entrepreneurs in Nepal, even though I had day job as a media CEO, as a water aid person and Sherpa person, this Entrepreneurs in Nepal was my weekend gig, if you will. I used to meet people, entrepreneurs, for coffee at a cafe, and we would go over their business plan, help them network with other people, help them raise funds, basically act as a pro bono friend, if you will. Basically somebody not charging money, but really getting a sense of the entrepreneurial scene, really feeding off their energy, and also finding ways to be useful to them, to be helpful to them, and so forth. And that went on really, really well. I really enjoyed that. We used to run training camps. We used to provide fundraising tips to entrepreneurs. And that went on from 2007 till 2013-14. After that, I got busy with WaterAid and others. But my other friends sort of took that work further and further. And now we have a thriving community. And many companies have come out of Entrepreneurs Nepal, other consulting companies, as well as tech startups and so forth. So it's really great to see, Nepali entrepreneurial ecosystem evolving from what we call small business, like beauty parlors, haircutting salons, clothing stores, from that to tech startups, what Bilal calls, basically IDEs, idea-driven enterprises, basically. So that's been a really gratifying thing for me to see. So I'll stop here. I guess I've been going on and on. Sorry about that.
No, that sounds really amazing. That's why we never stopped you.
Okay.
It's a journey, right? It's really inspiring for us to know that journey. And I listened to everything you said, and I really, let's say, I'm probably much less experienced than you, but I experienced some of what you have experienced. Based on that, and working in different kind of markets, I also work with media. I also work with fashion. It's been pretty amazing to be jumping from market to market. But I really want to ask you, because one of the things that inspired me a lot to work with entrepreneurship is that I'm from Brazil, and we have a lot of inequity here. We have different kind of social situations, and it's really you have a lot of very qualified people with a lot of cultural access, and others that they don't have that much, but they have the entrepreneurial spirit. They want to create their own business. They wanted to change their lives through entrepreneurship. So how do you see entrepreneurship as a engine or as a way to get better, let's say, make things better for people that have less access to things? You said that you work with different kinds of people as a mentor, as a consultant. How do you see entrepreneurship as a way to improve people's lives and to give more opportunities?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I basically see entrepreneurship as a way of solving problems. So basically, entrepreneurship, I see it as a mindset. You see a problem, whether it's in the arts, let's say, whether it's in the sports sector, whether it's in environmental sector, what have you. So you see these problems, and you bring an entrepreneurial mindset to that. Basically, entrepreneurial mindset is, okay, given this problem, what resources am I going to bring to this? How do I sequence my activities? How do I do the version one of anything, a solution, right? And once the version one is there, how can I improve on that, iterate, and go on to version two, version three? How can I now, get more buy-in from other people, my stakeholders, and so forth? So basically, the entrepreneurial mindset, it doesn't matter whether you are running a nonprofit, for-profit, or government agency. The entrepreneurial mindset is always about, solving problems, which in effect really means, helping people actually. So helping people comes second, but solving problems come first. So whenever I advise, entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs, I tell them, it's not about making money. Money is the reward at the end, actually. But, if you focus on the end goal from day one, maybe that may happen, that may not happen, we don't know. But let's enjoy the process. Let's focus on the process of thinking things through, process of putting things together, process of trying things out, process of failing, and then understanding why you failed, right? That's the process. I really try to instill the discipline of the process, because sometimes, we are so enamored of the results, the end goal. It's like trying to climb a mountain, but always looking at the top, but not looking at the step right in front of you, basically. So I would say that, I see entrepreneurship as a very powerful, effective tool to solve or to address social inequities, environmental problems, problems that are too big for any one of us to solve. That's how I see, entrepreneurship as something of value to me and also to people I advise.
That's a perfect answer. It's more than I expected, actually. All that you said, we can all agree on that. And also, you told about people. Not many people speak like that. You're solving problems people have. You cannot go away from that. At the same time, your answer is so complete in that sense that it's perfect. So, thanks so much for giving us this perspective. It's really awesome.
Yeah, and I think the group, if I can say, probably wholeheartedly agrees with you on that perspective in your definition of entrepreneurship. We actually have a question from Andrew that I want to read for you. He said some of us may received some Sherpa adventureware, and he wanted to ask you how your prior experiences helped you with your current role, and what else have you had to learn on the fly as you launched into this new age of angel investing? What do you continue to learn about, and in which areas?
I look back upon my Sherpa days, with fondness because we were dealing with international buyers, international customers all the time, and American buyers, American customers, the big like REI and so forth, the big companies, right? They wanted their shipment on time without any question. It didn't matter whether there was an earthquake in Nepal or shipping lines were disrupted and all that. They just didn't care. It was all about punctuality, punctuality, punctuality. Otherwise, they would find us. So I learned the importance of, really planning. I joke that, in Nepal, not only do we need plan B, we have to use all the letters of the alphabet, all the way to the Z. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you cannot make any plan, you know? So yeah. So it really, that working with very big American buyers really put me and my team on our toes. We had to at least ship the stuff, at least a week early so that, nothing untoward happens to the shipment and so forth. So that was very important. But the European buyers really focus on the quality, the other issues such as, who made this jacket and how much were they paid and what happens when they earn an income. Will they spend that money on their children's nutrition, children's education? How are they better off having this job, so that we buy these jackets from you, but what happens to all the money? So basically, unraveling all that and trying to figure out, how that money stream works was also an educational experience for me. So I learned all these things other than the standard managing, supply chain and so forth. So these were like quite revelation for me. And they also allowed me to work with a diverse set of international customers, national customers, and so forth. So when I moved to angel investment, it was more like, my credibility was established up to a point, but I still had to use other people's money to get things going. So, I learned the importance of communication. Communication was very, very important, and also giving people bad news, saying that, look, we really messed up this time. The reason we messed up was this, but you know what? It's not going to happen again. We're really sorry about that. We will make amends for this in this manner. Is that agreeable to you? They may shout and they may be angry, but at least they know that you're telling them the truth. So really, first of all, making fewer mistakes. But when you do goof off, not give surprises to your customers, to your angel investors, and so forth. So basically, those are some of the lessons that really transitioned well for me to move into angel investment, actually. And also, angel investment is mostly about telling them about your doubts as well, saying that I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the probability is in the positive direction. So basically telling them, but if you want 90% certainty, maybe this is not for you. If you want 70, 60% certainty, maybe we can, talk further, right? Basically. So when we speak like that in tentative terms, investors are reassured. They know that we're not trying to come across as super confident people with, with all the answers and all that, and, some of them will drop out, but most will stick around. At least they see that you are learning as you go along, and also you are open with your vulnerabilities, and you are also willing to question your own thinking and all that. Once they see that, they are more likely to co-create the investment process with you, and that's what I've learned. I hadn't really thought of that before, but now that I know Andrew's question forces me to think, and angel investors, the good ones, they want to co-create the investment process with you, which results in added learning for both sides. So that's what I've learned, and that's how I've transitioned from Sherpa to SAFAL.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, it's so perfect for the question that I'm going to ask now, because I didn't change because of your answer, but it's just so perfect that it comes along with this. I wanted to ask you, because as an entrepreneur, I have my own company for years, and I've been to angel investment events and I participated on them as a person that interested in on investing and also on getting funds for my own company. So I wanted to ask you, what do you look? You thought about risk to us. Of course, angel investments are dealing with angel investors are dealing with risk all the time, right? And the risk is a big part of entrepreneurship in general. But how do you choose, let's say, what do you see? And I think that's a good question for everyone involved, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs here too. Okay, I'm an entrepreneur. So what do you look at me and you see if I'm a good founder, a good leader? What do you look for? I know that you're a good kind of a person of negotiation, and you're good with entrepreneurship. So how do you project this experience you had as an entrepreneur, as a person of mentorship? How do you see the qualities of an entrepreneur in that person that you're going to invest? Because, you know, people think the investors are looking for, you know, companies with IP, with innovative products, or with some kind of patent. But what I learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you angel investors looks also for people, and most of the time they are looking more at the team and the founders. So how do you see that? What are the best characteristics of the team, of the people that are the founders? So that's, you know, the question I want to ask.
Yeah, so I think, angel investment is the riskiest of all investment, because basically we're dealing with a very baby company, and the chances of that baby company dying are very, very high. So we all know that. So risk appetite there is quite different from investing in a larger company and so forth. That being the case, I usually look for a drive for execution, getting things done. I think that mentality is very important. First of all, the first thing I would look for is how passionate you are about the problem. Passionate about the problem in the sense that how driven are you to solve that problem, right? And what are your thinking thought process around that? So that's number one. Number two is that I would like to see some evidence of execution. It doesn't matter, even without much resource, what have we done so far? If you have gotten, kind of a couple desks and got things started, building a prototype, I like that actually. So I look for evidence of execution. That's very, very important, because we are looking for, people who can execute and people who can execute at scale. So those are the other things that I look for. But, before we go to execution at scale, I really look for execution ability, at least evidence of that. It doesn't have to be big execution right off the bat. It could be like small execution steps. And the person should be able to say, we didn't have this, but you know what? We sort of like put together this and now it's working. We have something working model. This is our workspace. This is the mattress. We're sleeping on it. We're doing the coding, whatever. The execution part is very important.
We can say that you look for doers, people that do stuff, that make things happen.
That is correct. They have a sense of the problem, and they are doers, and they're also adaptable in the sense that they learn from their mistakes very quickly. They can explain, saying, I thought X would happen. You know what? That didn't happen. I threw out X. Now I'm into Y. Let's see whether this works or not. That agility of mind. Yeah.
The ones that deliver. But when you come to personal traits, do you look for something like good leader, talks well, good presentation? There's anything beyond like just the work they're doing, or is just we did this, we achieved this, we create a prototype, we improved it? How do you see also like the personal traits or the soft skills?
I used to believe that personal traits were important, but now I put less emphasis on them. I mean, those are nice to have, basically, right? But I would look for, some unfakeable characteristics, something like persistence, drive, track record of they're executing something on some level. People are always nice and, they speak fluently and all that. I've learned to discount those traits over time, not that I'm opposed to them. I still like them, but I would like to see, what have you done with what you have, as opposed to, what are you going to do?
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. You can't fake that you did something, right? But you can fake that you're a good person, you're nice, or you can talk very well on a presentation, on a pitch, but you can be a terrible leader. If you're a good leader, things will happen. You're going to do stuff, you're going to prototype, you're going to create something. But if you're not a good leader, it's easy to see that way. That's a perfect answer for me, because I never thought about it that way. So
the one point I would make is being adaptable, meaning that, you don't have to be a good leader right off the bat, but if you are willing to be coached, open to feedback, open to adaptation and all that, you are going to be a better leader 6 months, 1 year down the road, actually. So we also look for people who grow with us, in the sense that, as long as they have the basic drive and execution abilities, people can grow and, grow to a better leader. So I don't expect people to come prepackaged, pre-installed, all ready to go, but more like, they have the kernel of good, unfakeable characteristics, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, and then rest can be built up over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have expression here in Brazil for that, actually. We say that they have a shine on the eyes. It's just the thing that you have, you just look at that and you want to do it, and that's it. The rest you learn if you're open to learn, right? You don't have to be like, if the person's like thinks they're already perfect, they can't grow. So that's the worst thing. Well, that's a perfect question. Yeah, I'm gonna pass to Nancy now.
Yeah, that was such a great question, Daniel. Thank you so much. And thanks for the great answer, Ashu. So, Ashu, I know you've had a long career working in both Nepal and Bangladesh. And I was wondering if you could talk to us a bit about some of the learning curve in your international business experience.
Yeah, my learning curve in the international business is that international commerce moves very very fast. People are very they work on punishing schedules, and the word is the bond in the sense that you say that you deliver X and you have to deliver, otherwise they move on. Right? It's very very fast paced and all that. And I think in Nepal, we do not have that sense of urgency about many things, and many Nepali businesses have a hard time coping with international demands because culturally we are much more relaxed. We're much more oh, it'll happen tomorrow, that kind of culture. It wasn't a shock to me because I was used to that when I was a student in the US and all that. But getting everybody else motivated, the factory workers, the factory owners, the supply chain people, the logistics people, telling them that even though we are shipping on Monday, we have to get everything in place by Thursday, prior to that Monday, right? Basically, getting those elements in place was quite difficult for me. And initially, they didn't understand, if it's going to be shipped on Monday, we can get ready by Monday morning, which wasn't going to be the case. But anyway, so really motivating them and saying them, if we ship things on time, there's more money for all of us. There's happiness all around and all that. So I didn't realize how much work I needed to do persuading people, motivating them, and getting them to be on my side, understanding their perspectives, but at the same time, helping them see the client's perspective, the customer's perspective, right? All that was a lot of soft skill work, if you will. I had to do a lot of, it was basically showing up, having a conversation and helping them, unblock some of the constraints in their systems. Maybe they had worker shortages, maybe they had, machines that were malfunctioning and all that, and really helping them solve their problems so that they could then raise productivity and their efficiency so that things will be fine on the client side. So I think doing all this, what I call the innards of running not only my company but also other people's company, and making sure that we all showed up nice and fine for the clients, that was something I hadn't really thought much about before. But Sherpa really forced me to come to terms with that. And initially it was difficult, but over time we managed, just kind of squeaked by. The client didn't see the sausage making, that went behind the curtain, if you will. That was the learning curve for me. The second thing was cultural differences. Bangladesh, was a different culture is a different culture from Nepal. Somewhat similar in certain ways, but again different. In Bangladesh, there's just more people, more competition, more raw, and a lot of competition. Sort of like very hunger to succeed actually, because in terms of land mass, in Nepal is comparable to Bangladesh, just in terms of land mass, land size, right? But population-wise, Bangladesh is 6 times more. So that breeds its own sense of insecurity, competition, hunger, and so forth, which Nepal doesn't have. So again. I had some good, ambitious, driven Bangladeshi friends. So I was in good company, but I learned a lot from them. And, I realized that, having that sense of urgency, sense of speed was also important for me and for my own business. And I tried to bring some of that into the companies or organizations I ran in Nepal, and I still run at SAFAL basically. So yeah, so those are some of the lessons that I picked up from the Bangladesh and the Nepal, and also from the US. It's always about the deadlines. Basically, whether you are turning a paper or doing something, deadlines. Deadlines can be extended, I suppose, but then people look at you differently, if you keep on extending the deadlines. So there was one lesson. So again, the whole point of, bringing deadlines, speed, urgency, ambition, drive, and syncing well with being in sync with the international commerce, So those are some of the elements that my international jobs have given me to sort of help me survive and thrive in Nepal, I suppose. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, I have a similar experience here. In my company, we look so much at deadlines but it's not that valuable here in Brazil. So they look a lot to the strategy and to conversations and stuff. But anyways, it's a good way to have this international experience so you can work with all of that. I had a question, but I'm actually gonna take the freedom of poetry here, and I'm gonna merge that with an Andrew's question. I was about to ask what's the most exciting stage of a startup in your opinion, but I know that you're an angel investor, so probably like the beginning was one of the most interesting ones. But taking this freedom, Andrew just asked here, what advice today's Ashu give you give to Ashu the first day you started in your entrepreneurship journey. So we're talking about start. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the beginning I was impatient. I didn't listen to people. I had more answers than questions. Now I would listen to people more. Just listen, out listen them, if you will. Because if you just listen to people, they tell you things that would not normally cross your mind, right? So listening has become much more important. Really asking open-ended questions rather than supplying answers. Because as an angel investor, I realize that there are so many things I just don't know, and I don't want to make a decision just on the fly. So I have to ask questions, and I have to ask questions in a way it leads to some sort of structure, right? I'm trying to figure out, how does this thing work? What does it do? Who does it do it for? And how does it pay for itself? If investors put in money, how do they know that it's doing well? So basically, again, basically breaking the thinking down to the constituents part, if you will, and really rebuilding that up, and to understand, how it's put together, and basically asking questions around that, what is the motivation, drive, and so forth. So I think I would ask more questions now. And communications with the investors, with the entrepreneur, and telling them, if you don't know something, you say, I don't know. I'm like, let me find out, get back to you next week or week after, whatever, what have you. So all these things are very, very important. So I guess, in the beginning, I thought I knew everything. In the beginning, I thought, I needed to supply answers, otherwise people would not think me as a smart person, right? So I had to appear smart. Now I don't care about those things. I'm basically trying to understand the motivation of the entrepreneurs, what problem it solves, why do they want to spend, a year or 2 years or 3 years of their life doing this. I'm much more interested in that, and I can ask open-ended questions. So I'm much more relaxed about angel investing now than I was, let's say, in the beginning of my career in this, when advising entrepreneurs and so forth. Basically, and also listening. Again, it's something that sounds very simple, but I'm amazed when people tell me when I listen, actually, as opposed to my interrupting the conversation all the time, right? So that's something over time.
I don't think that's simple at all. Listening is really hard, actually. You thought it's all about asking the right questions. So it's not having all the answers. So that's the most important thing. And I think most entrepreneurs, most people, actually, most professionals, they're trying to show that they know everything, that they study it, that they are qualified for the job. But the truth is, for science, you have to ask questions. So when you're creating a company, you have to ask the right questions to get the right answer. So it makes all the sense for us. And in that sense, complementing the questions just a little bit, what do you have to say about expectations? When you're starting, is different, or you have the same expectations now, or you're more conservative? Or that's one of the things that I think about starting, and the difference that makes now. How do you feel about that?
I think I'm much more tolerant of mistakes and errors and failures now than I was before. Before, I was much more worried about failures, mistakes, errors. But now, I have this golden rule, actually, which is something like, as long as, people are not dying, as long as you are not losing everything, like all your assets and financial security and whatnot, and as long as you are not losing your reputation for life, basically, like you are behind prisons and what have you. So as long as these three Chinese walls of risks are taken care of, right, nobody's going to die, you're not going to lose all your assets, you're not going to lose reputation forever. Every other mistake is somewhat negotiable. These are reversible errors, perhaps, and maybe not all of them, but most of them are. So I'm much more tolerant of errors and mistakes. But I would encourage, and I encourage people to speak much more openly about their mistakes and errors and share that with others, so that we can all become smarter, all at once, rather than trying to figure out one mistake at a time, right? Rather than doing it at an individual level. So much more openness about mistakes, errors, and these things happen. And these are mistakes of, these are not mistakes of great significance. They have some significance, but not so much as to, sink the company, so to speak. And the constant communication also uncovers a lot of these mistakes, and that creates a good path for the entrepreneurs and the startups to course correct and move ahead, I suppose. That is something I've learned over time. And also working with investors, assuring them that, things are on track, and if not, helping them become better board members, because they sit on boards and sometimes they don't want to run the company themselves, telling them that, maybe that's not the best way to help the entrepreneur. You need to take a step back. You have to look at the big picture, the milestones, the goalposts, rather than, the content of the activities and so forth. So it's a constant, umpiring, refereeing, coaching, mentoring, much more of that role, and doing it at a level at which I always try to excel, strive for my best and all that, and that really keeps me busy as well. And that's the best value I can bring to the table, I suppose. So this is something I've learned to do over time, but that was not in my, thinking makeup or thinking pattern in the beginning. Yeah.
I think the way that you describe it's a very mature way to deal with entrepreneurship and uncertainty and all this stuff, right? That's pretty cool. Thanks for the answer.
Absolutely.
It's really amazing.
Well, one of the questions we like to ask is what keeps you going and growing yourself? And I think you addressed that beautifully in your last answer. Spencer, do you have audio to read your question?
Thank you so much for coming on today, Ashu. As a leader and an engineer myself, I find sometimes that I fall into what can be called analysis paralysis, where I'm looking for more and more information around a decision. This can be right in some technical challenges, but I think in more like human-centric areas, it can cause large and unnecessary delays. How do you know when you have enough information on a topic to make a big decision?
Yeah, I mean, I used to be like that. I'm an information sponge, so basically, I take in much information, and I know that it's not enough, and I still need to find more. So I think that's a struggle I had. I still have at times. I've learned to learn one thing, that is, things change, context change, and nuances change. Times changes everything. So that way, I do not now hold on to trying to find 100% of the information or 200% of information. Once I have like reasonable amount of information, which is usually 60 to 70%, 70% is usually a good benchmark for me. And then I usually try to do it, because I now realize that, once you start doing something, more real-time information flows from that, as opposed to, collecting information to start the work, right? Basically. So in the writing process, I usually have some ideas about writing. I don't have the full paper in my mind, so to speak, but I start to write a paragraph or two paragraph, three paragraph, and more ideas come from the act of writing. So the act of doing, act of writing creates more ideas. And likewise, in many decisions that I make, I have some direction as to this is where I want to go. Previously, again, analysis paralysis used to kick in, and I used to stymie myself from doing anything. That was a real bummer. But over time, I realized that I know just enough to get started. Let me get started. Let me start doing it. Let the real world, the hard, cold reality, teach me more, because I cannot fake that. That is like the knowledge that I have to come to grips with. And once I sort of switch my mental mode to that frame of understanding, then I can get started, and then the writing flows, then the doing flows, and then the execution really starts, and execution itself starts teaching. So I would, if I were in your shoes, I would say that I'm like that, analysis paralysis kind of a person. That's not helping me much. Let me say that this much is enough to get started. Let me learn more by getting started, as opposed to just collecting information all the time in the first place. So I would try to make that switch. Again, it won't be easy. It'll take some time. It took me something like 3 to 4 years to make that switch. Gradual switch. Even today, I still have my bouts of paralysis, if you will. But over time, it can be changed, and I think we are going to be better for that. Actually, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Perfect. Ashu, it's perfect. It's the same thing I think and I do in my life, and that helped me so much. We all have analysis paralysis. That's a human thing, right? You start thinking too much and don't execute, nothing happens, you learn nothing. So that's it's not just an answer that you gave us right now, but it's actually a very good advice. So wow, I'm impressed, really.
I had to teach that to myself. Previously, I would just stare at the screen and not write anything. I said, what if I write 100 words? That's it, 100 garbage words. At least those got written, right? And suddenly the 100 garbage words, open doors for another 200 good words, and so on and so forth. Over time, you pick up. But then the switch is not easy. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen over time.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's what I usually give advice to some clients. They really have some problems starting some projects and they have a lot of questions. So I said, just let's launch it. So we see what the client said, what the users say, what happens. So that's when we will actually learn. So we actually do have a question. I think Nirdesh got her audio back. So can you ask now?
Thank you. It was really inspiring to hear your story and journey. I don't not have just one question. I have a few questions. You have gone from media company to water to Sherpa gear and now to Angel. So is there any approach like you require really in-depth knowledge in moments, right? So you said that you keep on working and you learn from there, but there is any specified approach that you have learned over the time to collect in this information at that speed for that purpose. And my other question would be, we are a startup in Nepal right now, working with more than 1.6 million users and more than 20. We are actually piloting in Bangladesh as well, and the VC scene is still in its early phase in Nepal. So does SAFAL Partner help this kind of startups to find network in countries like Bangladesh and India? And how do we connect to SAFAL Partners? And my last question would be, there are these Nepalese startup that have this concept that they cannot go global, but we think that we can go global as well, given our neighbors in India and Bangladesh, they are taking this big stride in the startup ecosystem. Do you see that mindset changing? And what would be your advice to startups operating out of Nepal, which want to go global, that have global ambitions? Thank you.
Sure. So let me take your third question first, and then move on to the second question, and then to the first question. So the third question is, yes, I would say that we have to go global, and to go global, we have to adopt the global best practices, right? Basically, and in these days of MIT Bootcamp members, great blogs, courses, and so forth. Going global is not difficult in terms of mindset, because we have to be connected to the right people, understand how they work. The global world really focuses on speed, accuracy, execution, value addition, and so forth. So we have to, sort of adopt those for our practices. It's like if you want to release a movie on Netflix, it has to adhere to certain standards, certain quality, so on and so forth. Likewise, a piece of code, piece of writing, what have you. So the audience is global now. The stage is global. We have to have that mindset. You can be local in the sense that you can be based in Kathmandu or Bangalore or Timbuktu or what have you, but you can see the whole world as your stage. So we have arrived. We are in that age now, so I think we can certainly look for that. But what we cannot do is use local practices and then try to go global. That won't happen. No, basically, we have to use local practices as long as they add value to the global practices. Then the local global harmony will work. Otherwise, just trying to go global by doing every practice local and so forth won't go. So we have to there has to be this mix and match. Certainly doable. And I would encourage more people to, think globally, even though they may be rooted locally and so forth. But it's a lot of work, a lot of, making sure that, the world understands you, the value addition and all that. That's important. So that's number 3, the answer. Number 2, we can certainly connect you with Bangladesh Angels. We have some good friends who run that particular network. They usually have, deal flows and, deal meetings, usually online. So certainly we can connect you with Nirjor Rahman, who runs that Bangladesh Angel network, and a good friend of ours. So certainly can be done. Please shoot me an email, and then I will take it from there. And on to the first question, I would say that I think I'm one of those guys. I just like to learn. I like the learning process. Of anything, right? Basically. So and learning again, maybe that's part of growing up in a large family where I had learned so many things. Learn how to cook, learn how to wash my clothes, learn how to sort of like wash the dishes, learn sort of like how to take care of my younger brothers, so on and so forth. So learning has always been something that is central to me. That's just me in the sense that I cannot not learn, so to speak, right? So again, when I was at the media company, I had to learn a lot of things. I had to learn how to manage my board, how to sort of like, be on their good side without being their slave, so to speak, right? Without sort of like, giving them the honest bad news, but at the same time, giving that piece of bad news with solutions that I had thought about and so forth. So all these were, part of my learning. And with WaterAid also, I had to learn where I can add value. I'm not a water engineer. I'm not a sanitation specialist. I'm not a public health specialist. But I have to see the connections among these, very different fields, and come up with something, some sort of a meta question or meta theory or meta connector that sort of unites them all, basically, so that there is value added for the organization. So when I focused on working with the disabilities or working with cool girls, helping them with water sanitation issues, and working with marginalized communities, those are some value addition from my side. I could connect the dots. I could see different pieces, just floating about, and I could, as the leader of the organization, bring them together. That's what I could do, and that's where I added my value. And people said, "Oh, that's nice." Now we see why you are our organizational leader. So again, value addition is really important, because learning for learning, I'm not a researcher. I don't work in academia. So my learning has to be practical. People have to see that, it's useful to them, it's beneficial to them. Otherwise, what's the point, right? Basically. So because I work with people, that's important. And with Sherpa Gear, I mean, I'm not a fashion designer. I'm not a clothing designer. But the supply chain, once I figured out that, that is the backbone of the company, and efficiency brought on in the supply chain will have manifold results, good results. That's what I really focused on. So learning ability, applying that learning, and not being afraid to ask questions. Basically, usually when you start a new job, your first 1 week, you meet people, you ask a lot of questions. You basically preface your questions by saying, this may be a stupid question. Let me ask this to you anyway, and take a lot of notes. So this is what I've learned, and I've also taught myself a lot of these things. And I would say that in today's world, things are changing so fast. Information, gets outdated so fast. This ability to learn has become, a new skill in itself. Actually, it doesn't matter whether we are learning new Excel tricks. And today, just 1 hour, 2 hours ago, I don't know, I was trying to figure out Discord. I've never used this before. I was panicking at one time, but I said, okay, calm down, Ashu. You're gonna figure this out. Go to Google, and then I downloaded some instruction, and then I was there. So I was very happy. Again, it's a tiny example, but this willingness to learn, ability to learn, and when you don't know things, asking questions. There are people who are 1,000 times smarter than I am, and the world is full of such people, right? At worst, they may say, I cannot help you. That's okay. Then you go to the next person, you ask questions, and people are usually generous with their answers, generous with their help, and you get things done. So as long as you have that attitude that, I need to figure this out, I need to ask people, I need to do it, that really carries the day, and you can move from, from media to water to running a, outdoor gear company to running your own angel investment outfit. And now we're trying to set up a fund, all these sort of things come alive, come well, because, you're willing to ask questions. You're not afraid of learning. You're not afraid of, asking stupid questions, and you're putting it together in service of something which is, helping other people, working with people, and so forth. It all works very well, actually. So I would say that, go for it. I mean, there is Google, there are online courses, there is such a great community all around us. It's a shame not to take advantage of them for our own learning goal and growth, and, for our entrepreneurship journey. That's what I would say, Nirdesh.
Yeah, thank you, Dai, for the advice and the answer. Yeah, I think being on learning and, as you said, asking the right questions and not being afraid to not get answers. So, yeah, and I think SAFAL Handles will play an important role in developing ecosystem of startups in Nepal. And also, I'll shoot you an email so that we can get connected, and also might be find connections with Bangladesh Angels as well. And thank you very much for the answer.
Yeah, and just about the right question. And don't even worry about right question. Just ask questions. Some of those questions will be right. Some of them will be not so right. Don't worry. Ask questions, because asking questions is the only way we can uncover a lot of things about, what other people are thinking, how things are put together, and all that. So, yeah, I mean, ask questions. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you for the great questions, Nirdesh. I think you also made a really powerful point, Ashu, about seeing other people for help. I remind myself at this point, as the oldest in a large family myself, that asking other people to help empowers them to have an opportunity to feel good about being a leader. Even if it's not a perfect answer, it's a learning opportunity for them too. So I appreciate your points on that. I want to just make sure that we're okay on time for you, because we have run past the hour. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Sure. Absolutely.
I'd like to pass to Yubesh to ask his question.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. I'm from Nepal as well, and it's such a pleasure to be talking to you on this forum. And sincere thanks for your valuable time. And just recently, just few questions earlier about how Spencer emphasized on the aspect of analysis paralysis. I must have been going through that phase as well, and I'm dealing so much of my entrepreneurial journey in terms of that. But what I would like to ask about you would be about the tactical empathy in terms of the negotiation skills with different people, with different angel investors could be, or what's your take on the importance of tactical empathy and the tactical empathy for negotiation skills for entrepreneurs, and how do you think about how entrepreneurs would need to think in a longer run, because the immediate gratification thing has overthrown the world right now, and what's your take on that aspect as well? Would love to listen to your insights on that. Yeah, thank you so much. Over to you.
Okay, so thank you for the question. One thing I've learned over time is that, I like to focus on the process, actually. It doesn't come easily to me. I still struggle. Like, for example, if I have to write something, the process is of writing, even though it's a garbage writing in the first draft, so to speak, I have to get through the first draft and then edit it, polish it, revise it, so on and so forth. And entrepreneurship is something similar in the sense that, many of us, I guess, we love the final goal, getting awards, getting investors on board and all that. But all that requires lonely, quiet, unglamorous hard work, which is the process actually. So I think, much of my time really goes into telling entrepreneurs that, focus on the process. If you have figure out a good problem, important problem, focus on that. Don't worry about what others are. Just focus on that, and show evidence of your execution skills, show some results, and then we can talk to investors and other people as to how you can scale this up and so on and so forth. So having something is better than just having a dream, right? Basically. So I think, and in Nepal, especially in countries like Nepal, I know they get easy stories about Elon Musk or Warren Buffett or what have you. And they think that, I'm like Elon Musk and this and that. And that really is usually not a good way to, do entrepreneurship, because our realities are different. We have to be much more rooted to our local context. And the process work is very important. It's very, very important. And I think most of us forget that. And I try to bring the conversation back to the boring topic of conversation, process and so forth. So that's important. And with regard to, investors, I would say that, tell them what you want, basically. If they want 50% of your company, tell them no. That can happen, but I'm willing to negotiate a share that is, agreeable to you and agreeable to me. I don't have a number in mind. What do we have in mind? And we can negotiate back and forth, right? Basically. So usually, not to see investors as adversaries, but investors as, somebody who can help you. But at the same time, you are not going to be taken advantage of, basically. So you said that, I'm worried about X, Y, Z, about you investors. Could we have an honest conversation around this, right? You can have that conversation. And I think most genuine, empathetic investors would actually welcome that opportunity to engage in conversation with you about, what does it mean for them to invest, how can they help, and what if things go wrong, how can they make an exit or find a way to assist you, so on and so forth, actually. So always, I would say that, start with good intention on other people's part, and I used to be very bad at this. I used to be suspicious of people, I used to be sort of like, think of, maybe they had bad motivations and all that. But over time, I realized that most people are generally good, actually. They have good motivations, good intentions. Maybe their language could need some work and all that. But by and large, if you are willing to sit down and have an honest conversation with them, most people usually respond in kind. They usually get back to you with their answers and all that. But if you feel that, something is off, you can always say, well, thank you very much, and never interact with them again, because the world is big enough for us to interact with a large group of people. So I would say that with investor, there is no such thing as tactical negotiation and all that. Basically telling them, for this percentage, for this amount of money, I'm willing to give that percentage of equity. And here is my reasoning. Here's my thinking. This is what I'm thinking at the moment. If information changes, I may revise this. But for now, this is what I'm thinking of. If we can play ball with this, let's do that. If not, I'll move on to next investor. So you can be fairly, I wouldn't say blunt, but honest enough to give them an indication of where you are coming from. Because in negotiation, confidence plays a part, honesty plays a part. You don't have to be too honest through everything, but just enough honesty to say that, you need investment, but at the same time, you need to have your sense of independence. And I think, again, that comes from practice. And you are always welcome to, come to my office or to, or to hire a coach or a mentor who can give you some practice along these lines. Actually, this is, it requires practice. It doesn't come naturally to most of us. It didn't come naturally to me. I had a lot of practice, just like, making my share of mistakes and all that. So I think if you're willing to put in the time to do the process, I think, that should be fine. You get better over time. That's what I would say. Yuvesh?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was listening to a fair share of knowledge and wisdom alongside your experiences. And truly, the way you have emphasized on the practices and the open field executions would definitely be meaningful rather than just textbook knowledges. And such an amazing time that listening to you. Thank you so much for your time.
And one thing I want to emphasize is that, I've made my share of mistakes. I still do. But I want to learn from my mistake. I'm saying, what is going on? Why am I keep on banging my head against this wall? What's going on? Am I stupid? What am I not seeing? Right? What can I do differently? So A, conversation with myself, and B, conversation with other people, saying, what am I doing wrong, guys? Tell me, help me. And other people tell you things that you haven't thought of. And that way, again, you learn faster and quicker, and become better at the things.
Yeah, yeah. Conversations would help us propel ahead, and with this sort of conversations, and thank you, shout out to the founders, which Nancy, Spencer, the leaders, the flag bearers, the founders. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for the answer. Thanks so much for the question, you guys think. The thing is, with this answer, I was just thinking about it, and we had an investor here some time ago, and I had the opportunity to ask a question about investments and how do they feel about investing in people that they already know, people that are pitching their business randomly, they never met them before. And I had a personal experience with that. I gave a terrible pitch. It wasn't ready enough. So afterwards, we go to dinner with the investors and we talk a little bit more. And it was totally different because I said, "Oh, my pitch was terrible and stuff," and the guy said, "No, come to talk to us like in 3 months. You know, we know you're well intended, you're qualified and stuff." So your answer is just so perfect for this mindset that people intentions matter, people that do matter. You know, all this thing of being comfortable with who you are and asking the questions and giving and receiving feedback. And I think the most challenging thing, just making a little bit of a commentary on your answer, is to find actually people that are sincere and that are telling you the truth. That's the, to receive feedback and good advice or anything in that sense. Usually you have to trust these people also. So for me, it's not easy to make the filter because I usually I'm the one that trusts first and then ask questions later. But I mean, it's a very good thing to have in mind, and it was a great answer. We talked about a lot about asking questions. We're really wanted to ask you a question, and I've been asking questions all the time now, but I really, what is your advice for entrepreneurs or for us? Words of wisdom. It could be yours or someone else that you like, that you wanted to share to us as a good advice, as something that we can take from this conversation and take for our lives and our experiences.
Wow, I don't know. Well, where to start? I think if we frame our life as being useful to others, and I define others very broadly, that it could be your immediate family, your parents, your spouses, your spouse, your children, your neighbors, your community, what have you, right? Basically, if you find yourself, I'm going to be useful to other people, I'm going to be beneficial to other people, that really relaxes you a lot. Actually, you are not thinking about yourself, you're thinking about yourself as a vehicle to serve others. It doesn't have to have a religious or moral tone to it. But I think, when you think of yourself being in service to others, broadly defined, I think that gives you a sense of peace of mind, a sense of, purpose, sense of meaning. And I think that's one way to live a good life. That's what I think. This framework has really helped me, personally. I used to be a very young, agitated, impatient, prone to anger kind of a person in my younger days, in my 20s, I would say. Over time, I realized that that was not a good approach. People are generally good. Find a way to be helpful to them, beneficial to them, useful to them. Again, without being their slaves or without really kissing their whatever. You know what I mean? So it's more like being people generally want to work with you. People generally want to be with you. People generally want to seek your advice. They want your connections, in a nice way, right? And that usually, it fills me with joy. It fills them with joy, and we get something done. And the sphere of influences increases and increases and increases, right? So in entrepreneurship, apart from solving world's problem, we're also influencing one another, by our behaviors, by our mindset, by our connections, and so forth. And I think if I were to give any quote unquote words of wisdom, I would say that, if we frame ourselves and frame our life in terms of, being of service to others, that opens up a lot of doors, opens up a lot of opportunities, and helps us solve even, bigger problems than we can ever imagine. That's what I think. That has been true in my life. I don't know whether that translates well for everybody, but I would certainly urge you to give it a try, and see what good comes out of it. That's what I would say.
Wow, that's so perfect. I mean, that's when you think about others, right? It's the meaning of life, I think. Yeah, if we apply that, we're gonna achieve so much more and be so much more. Yeah, it's like the leading by example, right? That's the basics of leadership. So if you lead by example, you're thinking about the others, you're doing the executing all the small tasks that you have to make people's life better. So that's the basic thing. Wow, that's so good. Yeah.
Thank you so much, That was such a fantastic answer. Thank you so much, Ashu. We really appreciate your thoughts and everything you shared with us and taught us today. And thank you, everyone that was able to join and stay along with us today. We really appreciate your questions and you bringing your energy and perspective to today's discussion. Daniel and I and the whole team behind Founders Voyage feel really fortunate to be part of this community with you and for the opportunity to bring you this cooperative learning experience each week. So, Ashu, we hope that you have the opportunity to join us again. And if people would like to continue to connect with you, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
I think LinkedIn is good. And thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Daniel, for your excellent questions. And thank you, community, for your great questions. It gave me time to think and to reflect on some of my answers. So I've enjoyed the process. I've enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.
It was our pleasure.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. All right, we hope that you have a great week ahead and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.